Welcome to the latest BMW M4 competition, and it's fair to say that it hasn't exactly had an easy start in life. That grille, for example, has caused somewhat of a stir, as has the decision to offer the car with all-wheel drive for the first time in M3/M4 history. Even BMW's recent marketing campaigns have stoked controversy among its loyal M-car fanbase. And all of this has been before we've even got behind the wheel. How this car drives then is a chance for redemption and reassurance that Munich's finest still know how to make a proper driver's car. But before we get into it, please make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn your notifications on. Plus, why not buy the April 2021 issue of Car Magazine for an in-depth look at the new BMW M3. You know, I think we'd all agree that 2021 hasn't exactly started like we'd all hoped it would, but I think today is going to be an improvement because we've got the brand new BMW M4 Competition on track, and well, personally I've been looking forward to this for a good few weeks now, ever since I found out we were going to be doing it. Headline figures, well, this is the M4 competition version. We don't get the non-competition version in the UK anymore. It's comp or nothing. This is the 8-speed automatic version. Again, we won't be getting the manual in the UK, which is a bit of a shame, but apparently no one bought it, so we've only got ourselves to blame for that. And it's also rear-wheel drive, which isn't something you'd have to explain about a previous M3, M4, but for the first time, you will be able to get this car with all-wheel drive from summer 2021. But for now, we're sticking with the rear-wheel drive. It costs £76,000 base price. This one is spec'd up to £88,000, and that sounds a lot until you hear about the performance figures, because the 3-litre twin turbocharged straight 6 engine, the same engine as is used in the X3M, so it's the S58 engine, it produces an incredible 503 brake horsepower and 479 pounds-foot of torque. And trust me, it feels it. This is quick. I mean, really, really quick. Yeah, it's a good job we got a track. For context, this latest M4 has an extra 59 brake horsepower and 73 pounds-foot of torque over its predecessor. In fact, it's even punchier than the race-ready M4 GTS of 2016. That means you get a 0 to 62 mph time in just 3.9 seconds and a top speed in excess of 180 miles an hour. More important than the headline figures, though, is how the power is delivered, because on early F80 M4s, the power delivery could be quite spiky and it could catch you out. In this, it feels much more natural. There's huge reserves of torque, as you can tell from the massive torque figure, but it just feels like it comes in with a lot more finesse, really, if that's the right word. It's just more natural. And then as you head up to the 7,200 RPM red line, things start to get really quite interesting. This engine has got both ends of the scale taken care of, and it feels very at home in a car like this. It really does. And by the way, if you want to hear more of the exhaust sounds, video, top right hand corner now, we've done a little compilation for you. Enjoy. The quad pipes give a good account of themselves in the mid-range, but it's not until you hit the final 1000 RPM that you get that frenzied M-car growl. You know, I think it's the flexibility that sells itself here. You can either come out of a corner in a higher gear and just use the torque to push the car around and get the nose pointing in the right direction, or you can have it in a lower gear and get the back really starting to come into play and put on some pretty broad angles if you're feeling brave. Enough of the power though, what is the handling like? Well, the thing that grabbed my attention in the press pack is the fact that this weighs in excess of 1.7 tons, but like the M5, BMW seems to have mastered the art of not disguising the weight, because you can't really do that all that well. I mean, it's never going to handle like an Alpine A110, it's just simply not physically possible. But what they've done instead is make it work with the weight. It's a funny thing to describe because you're aware that it's there, but it's not really spoiling it for you. It's not causing an issue in the way that it always used to. They've changed the game, along with a number of other manufacturers, in fairness, but you can still have awesome fun with this and not be really wishing that it was a few hundred kilograms lighter. I mean, it wouldn't go amiss, but yeah, they've done a good job with it. And actually, some of that additional weight is to add increased bracing at both the front and the rear, so it feels tighter. There's less variation, there's less flex. It feels more like a racing car, and I like that. The front end bite is genuinely impressive. I mean, I do have to say that we've got the Michelin Cup tyres on this car. They're a factory option, but even so, deeply, deeply impressive. As long as you've got just a little bit of weight over the nose, you can chuck it in at some really quite unruly speeds. I mean, it has been a while since I drove an M4 Competition, but yeah, I'm pretty sure you can carry considerably more speed in with this. And then you can choose what kind of line you want and what kind of angle you want with the new drift control mode. 10 different settings, just like the AMG GTR. Tell you what though, it hasn't quite lost the hooligan nature of the old M4, because I told you that the engine was a little bit more predictable. There's still just that bit of uncertainty when you go from traction to no traction, which just makes you sweat. It makes you think, ooh, have I got this? Oof. I got up at 4:30 this morning to be here and I don't feel tired, funnily enough.
No doubt it would be intriguing to see if this edginess is tamed on the standard Pilot Sport 4S tyres. The Cup 2s will no doubt get you a quicker lap time in the right hands, but aren't designed to be as forgiving as their more versatile counterparts.
I'll tell you what, special mention goes to this Club Sport seat. It might be an extra £3,000, I believe it is, but it does save 9.6 kilograms, and it's also exceptionally comfortable. Heated, supportive, you can change the backrest and the base independently. It's just what you want when you need to drive several hours on the way home from the track and not get thrown around like a rag doll when you are on the track.
The M4 Competition then is a wound-up street fighter of a car. BMW's engineers use the outgoing CS model as a benchmark, and it shows because here's a two-door sports car that's delivering almost comedic levels of performance and heart-in-your-mouth moments. And all of this in a car that can still revert back to a sensible 4 Series at a mere flick of a switch.
I mean, sure, they've put the price up with this car, but I can't think what else you'd want to get for the money. Oh yeah, I forgot about the 911.
Now James has done a pretty good job there of talking up the BMW M4 and its sports car credentials, but you know, if you really want a sports car, wouldn't you just buy the sports car? Wouldn't you just rather have a 911? Now if that prospect sounds appealing, it gets better, because this car, this lightly optioned, surprisingly lightly optioned, 911 Carrera actually costs less than the with options M4 that James has been driving. Okay, so we are talking about a Carrera. We're not talking about a GT3 or a Turbo or even a Carrera S, just a bottom of the range Carrera, a car that probably doesn't get loads of attention in magazines, websites and on videos, but you know what, I think it really deserves to, because this is an absolutely brilliant car. It wasn't always the case that basic 911s were worth the time of day. A few years ago, before Porsche went turbocharged across the 911 range, the standard car, I think it was a 3.4, just didn't feel energetic enough to make the base car feel exciting, but this definitely does. No, it's not as powerful as the fancier 911s. Or the M4. The M4's got 503 horsepower. This has only got 380 horsepower. And it's got a stack less torque as well. But it is lighter, and you feel that absolutely everywhere. It doesn't quite turn in like Porsche's mid-engine cars do with, you know, simple physics for you. But it's still pretty good. It still feels like it wants to change direction. But to get it to turn, you do have to pay attention to this front end. You know, there's a lot of talk about the 911 traction. You know, brilliant, you can put the power down easily, but if you haven't got the front end locked in, you're just going to get a little bit of understeer, or maybe a lot of understeer. So you do have to pay attention to that. Either being patient or with a bit of a lift. Woo! Surprisingly playful, this car though. It hasn't quite got enough power in basic Carrera spec to really capitalize on the liberties you can take with the back end. But it is great fun. One similarity between this car and the M4 is in terms of gearbox. Well, on the face of it, there's a similarity. Neither of them can be ordered with a manual transmission. You can still get a manual in a 911 Carrera, but only a Carrera S, and that starts at almost 100 grand, so you're talking about a much more serious outlay. Fortunately, the transmission this car does come with is Porsche's PDK. It's been with us for over a decade now. It is a brilliant gearbox, so responsive, so incisive, and it's not just the speed it changes up that counts, it's the way it changes on the coming down through the gears. That's where a lot of automatic transmissions fall apart. Woo. Woo, woo, woo. Just makes you feel like that, this car. Makes you want to whoop. I love the brake feel as well. It's one of those connections, isn't it, that it reminds you that Porsche's roots are in motorsport. But what I mean is the feel, the firmness underfoot. This is just a set of steel brakes, no fancy ceramics or anything like that. It's that same, not exactly the same feel, but the same kind of feel that you'd get in a GT3 car or something like that. A really firm, reassuring pedal, loads of feel. And like the steering, it just makes you connected to the car. It makes you absolutely confident that you know what's going to happen. When you ask it to do something, the car's going to respond. Now, you might say that about lots of sports cars. Of course, the great thing about a 911 is that it blends it with the usability that you don't get in a lot of other sports cars. Okay, so it's not quite as practical as the M4, is it? And we're at a track, so I'm flying around here talking about the fact that it's got rear seats. Not so important today, but it is still important. I remember a journalist, an older, wiser journalist, when I was about James's age, telling me that I think I love 911s now. Wait till I've got kids, because then you realise it's the only kind of car like this that you can actually get proper use out of. I know it's kind of predictable when magazines test cars, test the 911 and say, oh, it's brilliant, isn't it brilliant? Because it's just the same old story. They're always brilliant. Well, almost. Sorry, but that's how it is. These are great to drive. So have I convinced you yet that this is better than the M4? I feel like I've convinced myself, but you know, I probably ought to have a go in the BMW just to make sure. Sport Plus, steering, comfort, sport. Are you going in front?
You go first.
Me?
You, yeah.
Right, now the chase is on. M4 Competition versus 911. This should be fun.
Now, I've been making out like I don't think this car's going to be very good, but in fact, this is exactly my kind of car. I love rear-wheel drive, front-engine cars. I love the way you can just balance them on the gas. Whoa. This one is a bit of a handful. Sounds amazing, doesn't it? Didn't think I'd be saying this, but actually, I prefer the sound of this to the 911.
Got to be honest, first thing that occurs to me, this gearbox, the PDK gearbox, it's a lot more exciting. It feels like a gearbox from a proper performance car. And the BMW is good. It does the changes well. They're quick, they're slick, but in this, it's got more drama to it. It rev matches better. It just feels like it's better suited to be driven hard.
This engine's got so much torque, it absolutely annihilates the 911 coming out of the corners. There's no way it can keep pace until you have to stand on the brakes at the end of the straight. This car feels like a big machine. It is a big machine, isn't it? Over 200 kilograms more than the 911, and the 911 is just so much more stable under braking.
This car just gives you that much more communication than the M4. You can feel what it's doing. There's still that 911 slight indecision or vagueness almost around the center point, but once it bites, you know exactly what's going on. They've worked on this steering and they've made it fantastic, and honestly, the BMW, for feel, for how much information you're getting, it's brilliant fun, but it can't hold a candle to this. I wonder what Chris thinks of it, having driven this for a lot of the day and getting into that. I wonder what he thinks.
It's almost like driving a kind of 60s races, you know, those like massive GT cars you see racing at the Goodwood Revival where they're sawing away at the steering wheel. It almost feels like you're driving one of those. You can take big liberties if you're brave enough. It is quite snatchy. It doesn't feel quite fluid in terms of its slidability compared to older M3s. It's just a little bit on or off. You've got to get your head around.
Oh, there he goes. There's the back end coming round on the BMW. This is just so much more planted. I mean, it's got a lot less power, of course, but even if it had the same amount of power, that rear engine, the traction.
One thing I noticed is the visibility, that big mirror there, really kills the visibility into these right-handers.
The driving position as well. I mean, in the BMW, it's low down. Definitely, there's no complaints there, but in this, you feel like you're in a sports car. You don't feel like you're in just a regular two-door coupe that's had the driving position lowered. I don't know how Porsche keep doing this. They always do it. Someone brings out something new and exciting, and then they just remind you why they're the benchmark. Because around a track, this is great. This is really good fun.
Like the 911, you've got to get that nose tied into the corner. You can either do that with a bit of patience or Bit of a dab on the brakes maybe, you've got more options, including going across the grass, it seems.
With the light drawing in and the fuel and rubber reserves running low, it was time to make a decision. Not only on which is the best track car, but which we would spend our own money on.
Chris, don't know about you, but I have had a fantastic day here in sunny Wales with the M4 and the 911, and I'm actually quite pleased that there's a man over there from BMW who's come to replace these tyres, because otherwise I wouldn't be getting home tonight after the way that you drove this thing.
I don't think it was just me, but I'll take that as a compliment anyway.
Maybe not, but yeah, this thing, I think that tells you a lot. It is a riot, it's brilliant fun.
Yeah, it is a character, like a proper comic book character, isn't it? It's over the top, it's outrageous, it's just a big ball of fury. But is it the most suited car to this track? Is it the car that you had the most fun in? Did you feel more engaged in that car on this track than you did in this one?
It got my blood pumping a lot, and I gotta say, I think this car might actually fare better on a larger track, but here today, these conditions, that thing was absolutely fantastic. There was so much feel. It felt like a proper sports car. Just almost everything about it was utterly brilliant around here. I know it sounds boring with Porsche and they always do well on track, but I mean, wow. That is a benchmark for a reason.
It is. And what's more amazing is that this is not a fancy GT3 or anything like that. It's just an absolute bottom of the range 911 Carrera.
Yeah, bottom of the range press car. They do exist. We managed to find one. It's even not got a colour. It's just in white. But yeah, it's a lesson in how less is more in some ways, I think. But that's the better track car. We're not going to debate that, I don't think, because we've decided that. But if it was your own money and you had 80 odd grand, what would you be spending it on? That or this? Tricky.
It is pretty tricky, and much as I love this car, I think it depends on what you need it to do beyond being able to sort of do hot laps. And for me, I need something more than this can deliver. I need something with a back seat, a usable back seat.
Yeah.
A decent boot, something that maybe feels effortlessly quick, and in this way this doesn't. Something that sounds a little bit better.
Yeah, and where you mentioned a boot and a back seat, there is of course an M3 and an M3 Touring coming along. So I think that would change the conversation entirely. But yeah, if it was your money and you had to buy one for everyday use, which one would you go for?
Every day?
Yeah.
It'd be a tricky one, but I think I'd probably go for the BMW.
It would be the M4. Okay. If it was my money, it is so tough because I know what we said about the BMW, but it is a character. It's rough around the edges, it's got some raw bits, but it is exciting and it's unique. But that delivers a more pure driving experience, and I think if you're going to spend 80 odd thousand pounds on a sports car, that's got to be the priority. So 911, but when I drive the M3 or the M3 Touring, I reserve the right to change my mind because I think that sounds like an even better package than this.